I've been following your YouTube channel for several months now. I can't find enough for us to tell you how grateful I am for what you do. And to everyone else who shares their experiences. I feel a huge sense of relief to know I'm not losing my mind. And that there are others who know the sheer terror of having a bad encounter with these freaking things. I just watched your video you posted on July 30th. It has prompted me to share what happened, especially at the end where the truck driver asked for Jesus to help. Let me explain. It was the second weekend of 2011. Rifle deer season in Vermont. Mid-November. I live in the southern part of Vermont, but I used to go up to Victory Bog Concord VT every year since I could drive. I always watched the posts as they take nice bucks out of there. And I got a few myself on this trip like many others. I left Pono the previous night and slept in my truck for a few hours before heading into the woods at about 4. I like to be in my spot and settled in. At least an hour before first light. There were patches of snow on the ground that evening. There was several inches of snow on the ground by morning. I got an earlier start, leaving my truck at about 3:30 a.m. that morning. It took me about an hour to get up to the top of this little ridge that overlooked a bowl with a small marsh. When I made it there, I still had over an hour when I made it there. I still had over an hour before daylight broke, and I kind of closed my eyes to kill some time before it got light. This is when things started to get real, and terrifying. Over the course of the hour after being settled in for a bit, and waiting for first light, I kept hearing noises. I attributed it to something walking nearby. At first I was excited, expecting to see a smasher down on the bowl, when daylight broke. But then I heard what sounded like big branches being broken within 20 yards of me. I was thinking moose instead of deer. The anticipation was killing me at the time. There wasn't anything in the woods that I was afraid of. As soon as light started to crack, I was scanning what I could make out, but nothing I could see. As it got progressively lighter, my anticipation turned to anxiety. About 5 yards behind me in the snow, I saw the giant tracks. They were huge. I'd seen programs on TV, and talked about Bigfoot, and I'd seen what they called tracks, and always took that crap with a grain of salt. Now I was nervous. The track had come right up behind the tree I was sitting under. The other side came from a thick pine grove. I settled back under the tree and tried to process what I was seeing. Trying to make sense of it. Maybe a friend that usually came with me, or someone messing with me. I distinctly remember asking myself if there was any way it could have been a grizzly bear. But not in northern BT. And that's when I took notice to how quiet everything was. Not even a chickadee peeping, or a frog was making a sound. I had to pull myself together and tell my imagination to calm down. I couldn't shake this feeling I was being watched. Then came this weird sound, like a vibration, like when you turn a speaker up on a radio without being on station. It sounded like it was coming from everywhere, and I didn't know what to make of it. Then came the rotted piece of pine tree. It shattered against the white birch only a few feet away. I jumped up, pretty much out of my skin, as I turned to the direction it came from. And there, 30 yards away from me, was Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever the hell you want to call it. Terror, not fear, not scared, just terror. I was 29 at the time. I'm 6'4", and this thing towered over me. His shoulders had to be at least 4 feet wide, shorter hair around his face, and a patch missing by its left pec. And my guess is, what must have been steam coming from the nape of its neck. His torso seemed longer than a human's. Its hair seemed 4 to 6 inches, except for its head. The front anyway. Its eyes seemed black. I couldn't make out any other detail in them. He wasn't a bear or a guy in a monkey suit, or any BS like that. It was a Bigfoot. Everything happened so fast, but I felt like it was staring at me for an eternity. I've been through a lot in my life, but never have felt such dread. To this day, even writing you now, a deep feeling of anxiety comes over me. After staring at this thing for what was honestly 5 to 10 seconds, it screamed. It sounded like it yelled Toronto, followed by a blood-curdling scream that I could only compare to a Fisher cat. It felt like my life was in danger, so I ran. My tree was about 300 yards on this access road, and from there it was a straight shot to my truck. I didn't think I would make it. About 100 yards from the logging road, I could hear this thing chasing me down. I hit a stone wall with a giant maple. That was one of my markers to get in and get out. I pulled up my Browning 9mm high power, and took several shots, not really aiming for it, but trying to scare it, or let it know I had firepower. I guess it didn't matter, it was not scared of me nor my gun. It seemed to stay about 40 or so yards away. Maybe got closer to me, I don't really know. But it took me only 20 minutes to get back to my truck, stopping to let a couple shots off only when my lungs started to burn. I felt like I was buying some time. I couldn't see it, the last 200 yards spread to the truck, but I knew it was there, and I wasn't wasting any time getting the hell out of there. It wasn't until I was almost back to the main road, that brings you into Concord, that I had to pull over and process everything that just happened. Had to change my pants, because I pissed myself and didn't notice until I stopped, and I had to unload my guns. My rifle, it was still up on the ridge when that chunk of wood hit the tree. When I jumped up, it fell off my lap. My pa gave me that Winchester Model 10308. It meant everything to me. It was his inheritance to me. There was no way in hell I was going back up there to get it. I'm sure if that thing wanted me dead, I would be dead. It was hard for me to drive away from there. On the trek back home, I tried to make sense of it all. It took weeks for me to feel safe, and I had to lie to my father, telling him that I'd set the rifle down and I just couldn't find it. I'm sure he didn't believe me with there being a lot of snow on the ground. What I was gonna tell him, Bigfoot, was I gonna tell him Bigfoot attacked me and it dropped? He would have thought I was nuts. I'll always keep it to myself. About a week later I went out of the deck for a smoke before bed. Out of the corner of my eye I noticed a movement. That same feeling of terror came over me, and just then that same thing came out of the shadows, knocked me over, and started dragging me up the driveway with my ankles. I screamed, "God help me, Jesus God help," over and over, and boom, I woke up in my bed. It felt so real. I had to smell my fingers to see if I had a smoke, and check my head for a lump. That's how awful and real it felt. Not a day goes by you will not think about that day. I've not been up to Victory since, and I'll probably never go back to that place ever again. I stick close to home now when I go out and hunt, but knowing that thing might be over the next hill just puts the worst morbid fear in me, and I'm not sure if I'll ever get over it. It seems to me like it was more human than anything, and the way it yelled Toronto, it was like it was telling me I didn't belong there. I got the hint. You and your viewers have gotten me to open up and investigate more about them. I've seen where some people say they might be multidimensional. Maybe that vibration sound has something to do with it, but you and this community have helped me overcome a few obstacles, and for that I am ever grateful. Maybe if one of your listeners are ever in Victory Bog area in Vermont and they came across my Winchester Model 10308, they could let you know. Sorry if this is long, but I would have brought this to my grave, if it wasn't for you all. Thank you. Feel free to use my name. It'll help someone else. So many have done for me. Keep up the good work. It helps, and makes for more of a difference than most people realize. Sincerely, Jason Bolger.
My name is Tracy Kanade. You may use my name. It was 1994 rifle hunting season. A friend of mine and his son went to Stripped Peak area near Lost Lake, northern Idaho. We split up the Lost Lake trailhead. My friend went over to the Lost Lake lookout, and I took a spur road. My grandfather always takes 7 steps, stops, looks, and listens. 7, that is, I take 3 anyway. There was ice crystals everywhere, and there had been mud, so movement was slow. I picked my way up the road. I'd maybe gone about a half mile when I spotted what I thought was a bear. I had a bear tag, so I slipped my Remington 7mm mag off safety, out from behind a windfall that was broken off at about 8 foot. There it was, a Bigfoot. It probably stood 9 feet tall. His shoulders were 1.5 again as wide as mine. I'm 6'1", 200 pounds. My shoulders are 30 inches wide. This guy appeared to have his head sitting on his shoulders. His head was 2 feet long, heavy brow. I was 15 yards from him. I could see that his hair was black, and his eyes were amber color. He had a squarish jaw, his chest was flat, much like a great ape. His hair was about like a lap in good shape, sleek, shiny, and very black. This guy was huge compared to me. I would guess 800 pounds. I was down there looking at him and he was looking at me maybe 45 seconds. 45 seconds in the wild is like an hour. That's a ridiculous chunk of time. I got this feeling that he was like my brother and I wouldn't shoot my brother, and I shouldn't shoot him. Feeling I don't know, he turned and was gone in a flash without a sound. Use my name.
Jeff here, from the heart of the Great Lakes. I have my fair share of hard-to-explain experiences, but today I find myself trying to convince myself that I didn't see what I know I saw. What else can I say? I've been suspicious due to all the odd things on this property over the last 6 years or so. I've been watching and listening to your stories, trying to understand what the hell is going on. I've heard reports of loud screams, and something pounding on the ground that shook the house. Trees broken and knocked over, smells where they shouldn't be smells, tree knocks, etc. I think I've known for the last 3 years, but I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. The property is smallish, 30 acres of land, half swamp, with the creek in the middle of it. I hunt it. We ride quads year round. There are a few close neighbors. It's not far from a couple dozen houses. Oh, before I forget, I grew up hunting and fishing. This morning I saw the belly side of a medium-sized bird flying overhead. I told my wife, look at the plated woodpecker. Which I knew, it was based on wing beat pattern on the bottom of the wing feathers. I've snowshoed for miles in the capital of BFE, following wolf and moose tracks. I've been out in it. I don't miss, I see everything. These are my outdoor credentials. It was hot out today, so a dip in the pool sounded pretty nice. I had my 2 youngest sons with me, 11 and 6. When we borrowed my out-of-town buddy's pool for a bit. He said it was cool, so tell all the snowflakes to relax. Knowing the land like I do, I know there is one spot you can stand and see the pool from more than 100 yards out, so yeah, Midwest, lots of trees. We were having fun, splashing, and had been there for a while. And then the thought came across my mind of, if something is there then it's there by now. It was about 4:15 p.m. now, July 18th, 2020. So I decided to jump in and stay in, and slowly take a peek. Bingo, 200 yards out standing in the creek. For your information, the creek is a good 5 feet deep from the bed to the top of bank, where it was dark black right. Where I thought it would be, was a large dot. It was a large black object. I did look when we had first gotten there, and there wasn't anything black in that area, just green weeds. It took about a half a second before I realized I was looking at it, then it moved 200 yards. With my naked eye saw a little detail. But that motion was a dead giveaway. That was also when I could see the size, and the speed. F me, it quickly, and I mean quickly, ducked behind some thicker weeds for cover on the bank to its left. I could still see some black through the weeds, but if not for the movement that I saw, I probably wouldn't have noticed anything at this point, and I would have just chalked it up to shadows. Less than a minute later, I looked again, and the big black object was again in the narrow gap between the tree and the weeds, and was again black and not green. I saw it again. And it obviously saw me looking at it again, and it made the same motion to hide behind the cover to its left. That doesn't happen if it's a bear. No weapon. Now both my boys asked what I was looking at this time, because by now, they can tell my head is locked on something. I thought I saw a deer, I told them. We didn't stay much longer, and I didn't even mention putting a towel down on their seats as we left. Was it a black bear? Hell no, they aren't normally in this area. Everyone's going to integrate. Well, sure, in the spring when the fawns are plentiful, maybe, but this motion was not of a bear nosing around. For 200 yards out it saw me looking at it, from just barely having my eyes above the edge of the pool. It was intelligent, and quick to react. It was watching, and then hiding. It did it twice exactly the same way. That was not the breeze blowing a branch either. In my mind I tried to tell it that I saw it. I was focused, took my time, and clearly thought I saw you. There were no crazy lights, orbs, or no extra large bare human-like footprints. No feeling of being watched this time. I felt that before. I just noticed that I have not specifically said what I saw. It was a Sasquatch, no doubt. I just can't believe it. I've never told anyone else, yet not sure if I'll be able to. So now I know how to bait the hook, and where to fish. What would you do? I like fishing. I appreciate all your work. Your facts. The forum. The education. Thank you for sharing all these stories from the others, and thank you for all the others who have shared. If we listen to and pay attention to details, then you don't have to be overwhelmingly shocked into reality as so many obviously have been. Those who hide this from people. What a bunch of dicks. I never felt threatened or afraid. Today I wasn't panicked at all. I was a little relieved. And now it makes sense. I'm still not looking forward to heading out back anytime soon. This is the most amazing experience I've ever had. Over the years in this area I have always felt like we were being watched, but never seen anything until this day. My buddy and I were out on a walk in the woods on footpath that many people walk on daily. It was hot and we both got tired, so we sat down on a big rock to rest. After about 15 minutes or so, we heard some heavy footsteps coming down the path. We thought it was just some more people walking. But as the sound came closer we realized that it was much bigger than a normal person. All at once this really bad stench came over us. It was enough to make anyone gag. As the sound came within a few feet of us it stopped. We couldn't see anything, no matter how hard we looked we saw nothing. As the fear overwhelmed us we wanted to leave but couldn't move. Then we saw it. It was about 8 to 9 feet tall, covered with dark hair, except on its face that was hairless. It looked like a grown man with a muscular physique. It was just swaying back and forth while watching us. After about 2 or 3 minutes we finally stood up and promptly started back to the truck. All we're saying was, "Oh my God, what the F, let's go." We finally made it to the truck, all the time looking back to see if it was following. It didn't seem to be following us. On a ride home we talked about the whole experience. I was saying how that was the one time I didn't have a gun with me when going on that walk in that area. Maybe that's a good thing, might have been a whole different experience if I had my gun. My buddy didn't want to tell anyone, so out of respect, I respected his request until now writing you. I told my father, but no one else. That's why I won't mention his name, but you can mention mine. Appreciate you and what you're doing, thanks. Jade Bowl. This encounter was in the Sample Meadow area above Huntington Lake, California. My name is Brian. I've been watching your YouTube channel for a while now, and I enjoy it. I like your approach. For me, I've always believed. Never had a sighting but had a few weird experiences. I've had many paranormal experiences since I was a kid. Now I'm 50 and I still have them on a semi-regular basis. Honestly, some were no joke. I can't say for sure Sasquatch exists, but if I had to bet, I'd say yes in my mind. Why not? There's far too many stories with evidence to shrug it off. I had 2 questionable Sasquatch encounters, or situations. One around when I was about 23 years old. I was on a kayak camping trip way up into the outer net Adirondacks in New York. Talk about the middle of nowhere. I left camp for a solo hike, probably a mile in from already nowhere. Up in some abandoned logging tracks I had my brother's Great Dane Shepherd with me. 145 pounds of muscle, and not afraid of anything. Around a bend ahead, he saw something down in a ravine. Whatever it was smashing trees like twigs, and shaking them. I was at the top. It may have been 150 feet away, but down out of sight. My brother's dog saw whatever it was and hauled ass towards me. Then right by me now. It concerned me, so I followed him running full speed. The funny thing was, he kept waiting for me. And made sure I got back to camp. Then he went into the tent and stayed there. Was it a bear or moose? I have no clue. Being way out there, I do know whatever it was, shook decent sized trees with ease, maybe because I was approaching, that was its warning. I'll never know, but if you saw these trees move like they did, one would question what it was. I wish I would have went to check it out. The second was at my vacation home. It's in Maine, about 2 hours from Boston, not so far up, but I've researched some local supposed sightings in my neighborhood. It is rural yet, there are neighbors. But out back borders a good amount of forest. One night my girlfriend and I were eating dinner by the fire. It was September. I was done eating and threw my paper plate with sauce into the fire. Just after I heard something with huge lung capacity from behind the tree line go, "Hoo, hoo." That's not going to read at all, right? It sounded large, and was very close. I was curious. As my girlfriend went inside, I wound up going in too. I've googled every animal sound, and nothing comes close, except for supposed Sasquatch recordings. The next weekend about 4 or 5 a.m., we heard a crashing in the woods, and screaming that I have heard a few times after, further away. Late after midnight, it all intrigues me, the unknown. I know these aren't actual sightings, so I'm sure the story isn't worth telling. But nevertheless they piqued my interest. I was mainly reaching out to say, hello. Your YouTube channel is awesome.